قال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام. قال إني يجد في بدني زؤوفا فقلت له أعوذك بالله يا عبتاه من الزوف. فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وسرت وانظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله.
اللهم صل على محمد.
فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه فقلت عليك السلام يا قرة عيني وسمرة فؤادي. فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله. فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء. فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوزي قد أذنت لك. فدخل معه تحت الكساء فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه فقلت عليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وسمرة فؤادي. فقال لي أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله. فقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء. فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء؟ فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافي أمتي قد أذنت لك. فدخلا معهما تحت الكساء. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. فقلت عليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين. فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن أمي رسول الله. فقلت نعم هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء. فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء؟ قال له عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيجي وخليفتي وصاحب علواعي قد أذنت لك فدخل علي تحت الكساء ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا عبد يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بزوتي قد أذنت لك فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ برسول الله بطرفي الكساء وأومأ بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم أنا حرب لمن حاربهم وسلم لمن سالمهم وعدو لمن عداهم ومحب لمن حبهم إنهم مني وأنا منهم فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فقال الله عز وجل يا ملائكتي ويا سكان السماوات إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مزية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ فقال عز وجل هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فقال جبرائيل يا ربي أتعزن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض لأكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله نعم قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله العلي الأعلى يقرأك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام ويقول لك وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنية ولا أرضا مدهية ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مزية ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم وقد أذن علي أن أدخل معكم فهل تعزن لي يا رسول الله؟ فقال رسول الله وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله إنه نعم قد أذن أذنت لك فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء فقال لي أبي إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
فقال علي لأبي يا رسول الله يخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. فقال النبي والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا مازو خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبين إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
پر محمد وآل محمد سلام.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
برائے خوشنودی امام زمانہ بلند سلامات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
جو بھی مصروف سلامی شہداء رہتا ہے، جو بھی مصروف سلامی شہداء رہتا ہے، گو وہ رہتا نہیں پر نام سدا رہتا ہے، گو وہ رہتا نہیں پر نام سدا رہتا ہے. اور شمر کہتا تھا یہی ماں ہے علی اکبر کی، شمر کہتا تھا یہی ماں ہے علی اکبر کی، جس کا ایک ہاتھ کلیجے پہ دھرا رہتا ہے، اور ہے یہ شرمندگی پانی کے نہ پہنچانے کی، ہے یہ شرمندگی پانی کے نہ پہنچانے کی، نیزے پہ بھی سر عباس جھکا رہتا ہے، نیزے پہ بھی سر عباس جھکا رہتا اور شام ہوتی ہے تو اونٹوں سے اترتے ہیں حرم، شام ہوتی ہے تو اونٹوں سے اترتے ہیں حرم، پر سرے شاہ تو نیزے پہ چڑھا رہتا ہے، ران کر ہند کی بیٹی نے سکینہ سے کہا، آن کر ہند کی بیٹی نے سکینہ سے کہا، سر تیرا کس لیے ہر وقت کھلا رہتا ہے، اور وہ لگی کہنے یتیموں کی نشانی ہے یہی، وہ لگی کہنے یتیموں کی نشانی ہے یہی، کرتب وارثی بچوں کا پھٹا رہتا ہے، کرتب وارثی بچوں کا پھٹا رہتا ہے، جو بھی مصروف سلام شہداء رہتا ہے۔ درود محمد وآل محمد۔
ہمارے دیگر صلوات
محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد
پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات۔
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد۔
زمانہ مجھ سے نہ پوچھے کہاں کہاں تھے حسین،
Kisa ho
مباہلا ہو کسا ہو کہ دشت کرب و بلا جہاں جہاں تھی ضرورت
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد
مباہلا ہو کسا ہو کہ دشت کرب و بلا جہاں جہاں تھی ضرورت وہاں تھے حسین اور محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ علیہ محمد وآل محمد صلی اللہ وصف علی رقم جو کیے جا رہا ہوں میں وصف علی رقم جو کیے جا رہا ہوں میں کفارِ گناہ دیے کفارِ گناہ دیے جا رہا ہوں میں وصف علی رقم جو کیے جا رہا ہوں میں دست گناہ سے دامن دل چاک چاک ہے اشکوں کے تار لے کے سیے جا رہا ہوں میں گر 100,000 مشکلیں آئے
نعرہ صلوات
محمد وآل محمد سلام
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد کنبے کو قیدی بنا چکے نبی کے کنبے کو قیدی بنا چکے رسالت پناہ سے وارثوں کو لے چلے کی راہ سے جب درمیان گنجے شہیدہ ہوا گزر آئے نظر عزیزوں کے لاش لہو میں تر صدمے سے بے کسوں کے لرزنے لگے کاپ کر بہنوں کے لاشوں کو سینوں سے لپٹی تھی اپنے بیٹے کے لاش سے کوئی ماں، کوئی بہن تھی بھائی کے لاش پانی میں جا، دریا کی سمت تھی کوئی زار و حزین رواں، کوئی پکارتی تھی میرا باپ ہے کہاں، کوئی پکارتی تھی میرا باپ ہے کہاں، ایک سوگوار خاک اڑاتی تھی دشت میں، کچھ ڈھونڈتی ہوئی چلی جاتی تھی دشت میں، کچھ ڈھونڈتی ہوئی چلی جاتی تھی دشت میں، مہلت جو ظالموں کے ستم سے ملی ذرا، بچوں کو ڈھونڈنے کو چلی بنت مرتضیٰ، جب دفتر حسین کا پایا نہ کچھ پتا، دریا کی سمت مڑ کے پکاری بسات پکار، دریا کی سمت مڑ کے پکاری بسات پکار، پور تازہ مصیبت گزر گئی، عباس کچھ خبر ہے سکینہ کدھر گئی، عباس کچھ خبر ہے سکینہ کدھر گئی، شامی جو شمع دین الہی بجھا چکے، محمد محمد صلی اللہ
امین تھوڑا تھوڑا آگے آ جائیں تاکہ جو بعد میں آنے والے ہیں ان کے لیے سوال ہو جائے. Assalamu alaikum. I wanted to thank everyone for honoring us with your presence at our Majlis and for offering your condolences to Bibi Fatima. Salam alaiha. It makes me happy to see that this tradition of Azadari has been being passed down from generation to generation, from culture to culture, from language to language, and that the foundations for this tradition in the English language, especially with English poetry, is being laid down. I have the honor to host a number of English poets today who will be reciting their poetry, inshallah. Before I introduce our first poet, just a small short poem that I have as well. If you could recite aloud salawat. This poem is called The Doors of Fulfillment. Abbas, who resides inside the sacred sanctuary of God's heart, reading love letters from those who hold so tightly to his hope like the teeth that clench the water skin. Abbas, whose luminous presence in the dark sky of despair guides the travelers of the night like the light at the end of the tunnel. Abbas, whose flag resembles a severed arm raised so high as if shouting, "I'm here, come to me, quench my thirst of fulfilling needs, for there is still a thirst in me for a tiny hope I could not quench." Abbas, who turns no one away, who seeks shelter beneath his shade, for laid trampled without aid under the scorching sun, was the one he could not save. Abbas won't ever let you fall, like the water that spilled from his water skin, and then his eyes, where an arrow was lodged as he fell upon his face, but kept his flag fluttering in the air forever. Abbas can't see tears in your eyes, like he trembled and cried, hearing thirsty little throats scream as they were trampled under the hooves of completely quenched horses. Abbas won't let you feel ashamed, like the shame he felt as the prisoners towards his body would stare, walking past it with despair. Abbas, whose doors of fulfillment, like his severed arms, are still open, whose Sakina put her hope in, who can never deny the hopeful, for there is still a little girl whispering into his ears, Abbas, do not disappoint them. Do not disappoint them like I was disappointed. And with this, I'd like to call our first poet, Turab Haider, to please recite some poetry.
I know there's a list of poets and then Maulana will do the khitabat. So just two short pieces of poetry that I want to recite. Both in the honor of Imam Ali. The first one in the honor of Imam Ali al-Amir al-Mu'mineen, and the second one in the honor of Imam Ali al-Zain al-Abidin. This first one I wrote a few weeks ago, Eid al-Ghadir par. एक आलिम को सुनाया तो उन्होंने कहा कि जिसकी जितनी मार्फत होगी वो उस हिसाब से समझेगा. So with the loudest salawat. And with the permission of my elders, Kalimas.
आवाज़ बुलंद सलावत.
Satisfaction of unburdened completion of the final chapter. Satisfaction of unburdened completion of the final chapter. The book is Ali, he is the author. The book is Ali, he is the author. Prophet Salam upon both, his will is the message. Let the truth be told, the unguided evoked, exceeders trapped. Ghadir is infinite. He is Al-Qadir, he is the master. The second one in the honor of Imam Zain al-Abidin, it's inspired by Imam's khutbah and doing an imagery of Imam's khutbah in the court of Yaseer with a loud salawat. With back crooked, feet drenched in blood, and throat dry to go. With back crooked, feet drenched in blood, and throat dry to go. The godly speech trampled all impostors in the imperial court, the deafening silence unveiling the mystic door. Wearing the weighty chains as rosary beads, the crisscrosses shackled around Sajjad's neck, cure the humanity. Wearing the weighty chains as rosary beads, the crisscrosses shackled around Sajjad's neck, cure the humanity. How blind are the hearts of the cursed, benighted of the God-sent progeny, the two wings, the two swords, the forbearance, the courage, Sajjad's abode. His aura resonating line of Allah in the impurities of Sham, he is Tahira Qawm Tathira. Keeper of the book and untold legacies, the 6 virtues and the 7 excellencies. The call of prayer echoes from Sajjad's chain. Hussein's name is all living, it exclaims, protecting the household sanctity. He is the adornment of worshippers, the progeny of infallibility. बराए खुद ताजील इमाम ज़माना बुलंद कर सलाम।
I'd like to now call Turab Rizvi to recite poetry from Noha.
Naqi
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Before I begin, just to give a little bit of context, as you all know, Hazrat Ali alayhi salam was referred to as the brother of Rasulullah, Naqi Rizvi, on many occasions. And I'd like to draw that same connection between Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam and Imam Hussain, along with how Imam Ali was the flag bearer on many occasions, so was Hazrat Abbas. And inshallah, I hope to draw this connection with your permission. When Ali had carried the flag in Badr, Muhammad knew there was no other. Like Ali, that would have his back, a man that he could call his brother. The foremost in loyalty at the forefront of the battlefield. Like Dhul Fiqar by Ali's hip, Ahmad yearns, Ali, come next to me. As time would pass, Siffin would arrive, and who would yearn to be by Ali's side? The moon of Bani Hashim, still a crescent of Islam, that would grow to become the full moon among stars. As Ahmad had Ali, Hussein had Abbas, two brothers in arms defending God's cause. As Ali defended Muhammad, his brother, Hussein entrusted the flag with no other than Abbas, whose palm would proudly resemble the palm of Ghadir, where the enemies trembled. O Abbas, they ask me whose flag I lift. I tell them the one that split the rift. Between truth and falsehood, the sand would sift to reveal those arms you defend Islam with. They thought they killed you, you lived on. The flag you carry lives on. As when the flag fell, victory was his. As death is temporary, but the message lived. When you speak of courage, you say Abbas, left with no hand, still defending the cause. 1,000 wounds received, yet each was worth the cost. When you speak of valor, you say Abbas. Son of the lion that is Ali, how does a warrior have a heart so sweet? His brother's keeper, the children's heartbeat. Abbas is the peak of loyalty. If patience is a virtue, then Abbas is its master, for who was calmer in calamity? If Abbas fell, then look and see the flags carried on Arba'een.
बराए खुशनुदी हज़रत अब्बास अलैहिस्सलाम बुलंद तर सलावत।
Jazakallah Turab. I'd like to invite Yaseer Moledina to recite poetry. Please recite loud salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. I begin in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Today's poem is dedicated to the mother of sons, Baneen. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Where are you, my brother? Has the flag bearer left so soon? Where are you, my brother? Where is Bani Hashim's moon? Two brothers, they stand amid the sands on that 10th day. The sons of Ahlul Bayt lay slain, their cloaks blood-stained. Hussein and Abbas, they're all that remain. Filled with grief and pain, they see the spear in Akbar and how Qasim was maimed. Abbas reaches for his sword, but he must refrain. Because a warrior of Allah does not simply fight with sword and spear, he is compassionate and he holds his ummah dear. He stands for what is right, though he may stand alone. He acts with humility, though he claims no throne. His days are spent in charity, his nights in dua. He gives voice to the voiceless, a shining moon through the night. A warrior knows when to be silent and when to fight. Like his father before him when they spat in his face. Like his father before him when they spat in his face. Abbas's intention was for Allah, and so he would wait. And as he waited, he heard the cries from the daughters of Hussein. So Abbas is given permission to ride out on the plain. Abbas rides out, a lion upon his steed. The enemies flee, for who can stand before this courageous son of Ali? With thunderous hooves he rides forth. Day has turned to night, and now the moon of Hashim is the only light. Abbas rides out with sword drawn, and when this moon has set will come a red dawn. The enemy parts for him like Musa did the sea. The enemy parts for him like Musa did the sea, and for just a moment Abbas is free. He breaks through the lines and then he kneels at the banks. He fills water and prepares for his return. The one who frowns readies himself with a face so stern. And as the thunder rages on and angels lead his steed, a command is uttered: Abbas must not succeed. Abbas holds his head aloft, grasping the water Sakina treasured, but then he looks down to find his right arm severed. Abbas holds his head aloft, grasping the water Sakina treasured, but then he looks down to find his right arm severed. The courageous Abbas endured like a lion to his prey, and so without an arm he continued on his way. The enemies pursued and began to attack together. Abbas looks down again and finds his left arm severed. The enemies pursued him and began to attack together. Abbas looks down again and finds his left arm severed. But the courageous Abbas endured like a lion to his prey, and so with no arms to help him, he continued on his way. The command rings out and arrows fly from bows. Abbas falls to the ground, pelted by the blows. One arrow pierces his eye, his face drenched in crimson. He calls out his salutation to Hussein. The master of martyrs has never felt such pain. As he cradles Abbas's head, tears of blood flow from his eyes. Abbas leaves this world, and still he hears the children's cries. And a voice rings out from the tents of Hussein: "Where are you, my uncle? Will the water come soon? Where are you, my uncle? Where is Bani Hashim's moon?" As the sun sets on Karbala and the tents begin to burn, Zainab stands guard, and to the river she would turn. "Where are you, my brother, the defender of our veils? Where are you, my brother, to hear Sakina's wail?" As the news reaches Medina, the people beat their chests. Baneen cries out in distress: "Where are you, my son? Your body lies on the bank, and your head upon a spear. Where are you, my brother, the one I held so dear?" But Abbas can only hear one voice that calls him from his grave: "Where are you, my brother? You left me in this place. Where are you, my brother, the moon of Bani Hashim with your shining face?" Salawat ala Muhammad.
Thank you, Yaseer. I'd like to invite Abbas Jafri to recite his poetry. Salawat ala Muhammad.
Salawat صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Kalimba. Salam. Ba Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
It's truly an honor for me to be in front of all of you today. Usually I recite in Urdu, so to recite my own piece in English is truly an honor. I'd like to thank Naqi and Gulzar for their hospitality and inviting me to recite today. With your permission, please recite aloud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As the shell of my sins begin to crack, the sound of a heart breaking gives birth to life. Fueled by the heat of the oxygen in this room, filled with the sighs of pain and heavy breaths of agony, ravaged in the mourning of the king of Karbala. And as this grieved air enters my lungs,
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. واللعنة الدائمة الباقية على أعدائهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: والشعراء يتبعهم الغاوون ألم تر أنهم في كل واد يهيمون وأنهم يقولون ما لا يفعلون إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وذكروا الله كثيرا وانتصروا من بعد ما ظلموا وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. صلوات. I've been requested to speak in English and move towards Urdu too, just before the Messiah. When Naqi Salamahu approached me for this Majlis, he mentioned that we have some English poets who are going to do their presentation, and he wanted me to recite the Majlis in English. So just yesterday I called him and I said that since you are doing poetry in English, maybe I will talk on the theme of poetry in Islam. As an encouragement, what I see this afternoon, alhamdulillah, let me just mention that a few years ago when this issue came up about training the next generation to imbibe this passion and love for Hussein and the Azaa of Hussein, so that we can continue that in the future generations in this environment in their own language. One of the things that I did was to dedicate from the 3 mahafil that we have in the early Sha'ban, 3rd, 4th and 5th, that the 5th Sha'ban, which is the Wiladat of Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam, we will totally dedicate that to poetry and emphasizing English poetry. And I think the first poet that I asked to come and recite was Naqi. And that's where we realized that there was a talent there in the community, but there was no platform for them to express their emotions in that way. And this is, alhamdulillah, continued more or less, and this will continue, inshallah, because we have to realize, and I would like to make a point, that I, myself, my language is Urdu. Many of them moved to ancestors of the Sadat in some continent, mostly came from Iran. And they had been there for a long, long time, the generations who came from Arabia. They were no more speaking Arabic. They adopted the new language, the new culture. Chelo kebab became their food. Even the lifestyle changed. But what happened? The mazhab was still the same, which was in Medina or in Qom or Sabzawar or Nishapur or wherever your ancestors came from. Then the migration pattern continued. You know, the ancestors of the Sadat moved to India. What happened? After a few generations, you know, you're going to ask them to eat chola kebab every day, they will say, oh, it's not going to work. Without masala, we can't survive. Language changed. But did the mazhab change? No. This is what we have to realize, that deen and mazhab is universal. This was not only for Arabia, not only for India, it is for the whole world. Coming to this, we have to make sure we spread the message of Imam Hussain alayhi salam to the people of this. To do that, we will have to learn their language. And this is how we have to ensure that our mazhab will survive and continue. That is the objective. The language can change. Salawat alayhi.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
For our salam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
ये तो तमहीद से पहले की तमहीद थी जो हमारा मजमून था वो कुछ और है. So talking about poetry and its place in Islam, let me just go a little bit a couple of steps back. Then when we look at the position of a human being from the Islamic perspective, we consider humans to be ashraful makhluqat, the best of the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when you compare human beings to animals, you will see there's a lot of, similarity between them. When we look at makhluqat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you have jamadat, nabatat, haywanat, and then insan. You have solid items, inanimate items, then you have vegetation world, then you have animals, then you have human beings. Between the animals and the human beings, there are quite a few common elements. When it comes to this element of desire, as we call it, the need for eating and drinking, the whole process of reprocreation, and then we look at the even element of ghadab, to defend ourselves whenever we find ourselves to be in danger. And so, mobility is there, common. But what is the distinction between human being and an animal? Interestingly, in the subject of logic, mantiq, taught in the Hausa, in the religious seminaries, the human being and the animals are equally described as haywan. The animals are haywan, and the human beings also are haywan. But the distinction is very important. When it comes to animals, we call them haywan samit. They are the silent animal. Then they don't have the ability to communicate the way human beings do. Well, they can make some sounds. They have a very limited, way of, calling one another, letting one another know things. But they don't have this ability to think and dream and express their ideas to the others. And that is why the human beings in mantiq are known as haywan and natiq, the speaking animal. And so when we look at this issue, we see the distinction of a insan against haywan is the issue of speaking, nutq, the ability to speak. And you will see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in Surah Rahman, when he talks about it, Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran, allamahu al-bayan. After the khilqat, the first thing is that Allah, gave this ability to the human beings to do bayan, to express their inner thoughts and feelings to one another. And so that is the issue of nutq and bayan, is the distinction of the human beings. Of course, when it comes to the bayan, there are different levels, different styles. You have nazm, you have nasr, prose or poetry. And poetry basically deals with the emotions of the human being. It is a reflection of the emotions and the thoughts of the poet. And this is where we see that, a poet is able to bring his ideas and thoughts into the poetry form. And this is actually considered to be one of the signs of a living civilization. If there is any nation which doesn't have this tradition of poetry in their own language, it will be considered to be a dead civilization. And so poetry plays an important role when it comes to the human society. And even Islam also. What is the value of poetry? Poetry, basically, whether it is acceptable or not, is worthy or not, it all depends on the purpose. And this is where I'll come to the last ayat of Surah Shu'ara. Interestingly, there is a whole surah known as poets. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the Shu'ara at the end, where He says, وَالشُّعَرَاء يَتَّبِعُهُمُ الْغَاوُونَ أَلَمْ تَرَ أَنَّهُمْ فِي كُلِّ وَادٍ يَهِيمُونَ. You know, Allah begins with negative. He says, look at the poets. They just follow, their own whims and desires. Do not you see they are moving into one valley to another of ideas and thoughts? وَعَنَّهُمْ يَقُولُونَ مَا لَا يَفْعَلُونَ. And they are not really practicing what they talk about. But this is not only for Shu'ara, even for Khutbah also. But after this negative point, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes an exception. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَذَكَرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا وَانْتَصَرُوا مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا ظُلِمُوا. After that negative comment, then Allah says, except, illa. Except those who have 4 qualities. Number 1, they have iman, عَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, they do good deeds. Number 3, they وَذَكَرُوا اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا, they often remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even when they are thinking about poetry, composing poetry, reciting the poetry. Allah is in their mind. And number 4, very important element, especially for the Shi'i history, is that the poets are those, they use poetry as a voice against the Zalimeen and the tyrants of their own time. This is where Karbala becomes for us that paradigm, that focus, that we look at everything from the perspective of Karbala. Salawat. Even in the history of Islam, and this is what I wanted to share with you, just to give you some inspiration to these young people, that you are not just starting from nothing. There is a whole legacy that we have in our history. Especially for the Arab society, poetry was one of the talents that they had. Although we call it, the era of Jahiliyyah, it doesn't mean they were just Jahil. No, that means that from the akhlaqi point of view, were Jahil. From the practical point of view, they were Jahil. But that didn't mean that they didn't know the language. And that's why the Quran came as a miracle. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would send, look at the best talent existed in that time in society, and then the mu'jiza would be from that, category. And so the Quran was sent as a miracle by itself. So it means the Arabs had reached to that level of bayan, and even when it came to poetry, once a year they had this fair in Bazar al-Waqar, where the poets would come and they would do their presentation, and the best one would be hung inside the Kaaba. And by the time Islam came, there were 7 mu'allaqat. There were 7, extraordinary pieces of poetry which are even existing now, and it is part of the Arab, literature, that people who go into this field, this is what they study. So this has been there from before Islam. When Islam came, this process continued. I think from our point of view, the first sha'ir, as far as our faith is concerned, is Hazrat Abu Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. This whole discussion about Abu Talib was a Muslim or a Kafir is irrelevant. You look at his words. This is his declaration, although he didn't probably say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah to these people. But it doesn't mean that, if you can glean the same concept from his words and poetry, that's good enough. You know, I can, I don't know how much time I have. I have actually gathered quite a few points here, but let me see what I can select. Salawat from me. If you look at his poetry about the Prophet of Islam, where he says, منعنا الرسول رسول المليك ببيض تلعلى كلمع البروق. We defended the messenger of the king, with a bright sword doing this. So then you put a condition. Ma nasartana bilisanik. As long as you support us with your tongue, you will have this help from the Malak. Salawat. And then you go on, you come to the era of the Khulafa, you come to the Ashab of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and then I'm just moving fast, you go on to the Umayyad, era, you come to Karbala. It's a whole chapter. You need one special majlis for it, to look at the rajas from both sides on the day of Ashura. How both parties introduce themselves. And that is itself a very rich, source for us to identify the identity of the two groups. But we'll leave that, inshallah, for some other time. Then you comes to Farazda. We live the time of the third and the fourth Imam. The famous qasida that he has, extempore. When the crown prince of Banu Umayyah, Hisham bin Abdul Malik, came for Hajj or Umrah, I'm not sure about the timing, but he was there. He came with his entourage of his soldiers, everyone. He came in, there were many people doing tawaf, nobody paid attention to him. He felt insulted, so he went to the side and sat down for the crowd to become thinner. And then all of a sudden he saw that the people are, moving away, opening the way for somebody who is coming towards the Kaaba. Although he knew who was he, but the Syrian soldiers around him, they didn't know. So somebody said, Marahaba, who is this? Because you're crown prince, nobody gave you any space. Who is this person? Out of this jealousy and envy, he basically says, I don't know. Farazda, who was there, now he was in kind of a taqiyya. But that time he couldn't take it anymore. That you are saying you don't know? And he extempore composed these lines where he says that, هذا الذي تعرف البطح وتعته والبيت يعرفه والحل والحرم. His footsteps are known to the Holy Land. The Kaaba knows him, so does the sanctuary and beyond. It's a long qasida there. I'll just come to one point of it where he talks about, who are his ancestors, talking about Rasul and Ali and Hamza and Jafar, Tayyar, and then Bibi Fatima. And then he says, وَلَيْسَ قَوْلُكَ مَنْ حَابَ بِظَاهِرِهِ. You don't know him when you say, who is this? This doesn't diminish his status. الْعَرَبُ تَعْرِفُ مَنْ أَنْكَرْتَ وَالْعَجَمِ. The Arabs and others all know him, whom you refuse to recognize. لو يعلم الركن من جاء يلثمه لخر يلثم منه ما وطع القدم. If the black stone would know who has come to him, it would fall down and kiss the dust of his feet. يكاد يمكسه يرفعن راحته ركن الحتيم إذا جاء ما يستلم. If he approached this stone to kiss it, it will actually lean forward to kiss his hand. And this is where, we see again this the poetry in the service of Deen and Mazhab. Salawat. Very quickly, let me just now move to the days of the sixth Imam. There was a person by the name of Sayyid Hamyari. He was not, or Sayyid Hamyari, not a Sayyid. Sayyid was his name actually. And he became Shia Isna Ashari. He was from Kaysaniya group of Shias who did not believe in the fifth and the sixth Imam, but after meeting the sixth Imam, he became the mainstream Shia. And in his family there was a mixture of Khawarij and Sunni and some Shia. His last words in poetry are very interesting, because when he was dying, somehow his face started becoming dark. People say in history that, he had this weakness of drinking. And so that was one of the impacts during the last moment of his life. And the Khawarij around him and his family, they were happy. See, this is Shia of Ali. This is what happening to him. And Sayyid Himyari felt very bad about it. And he did tawassul. And that's where we see, because he had been told by the Imam that anyone who dies, Ali will come there. And say all of a sudden they saw that his face started changing, becoming normal. And then he ended his life with these words of poetry where he says, أحب الذي من مات من أهل وده تلقاه بالبشرى لدي الموت يضحك. I love the one that when his followers and his lovers die, he comes to meet them with a smiling face, referring to Ali. وَمَنْ مَاتَ يَحْمِي غَيْرُهُ مِنْ عَدُوِّهِ. And whoever dies loving his enemies, فَلَيْسَ لَهُ إِلَّا النَّارُ مَسْلَكٌ. His path is nothing but the fire of Jahannam. And then addressing Ali, he could see Ali, not everyone around him. أنت وصي المصطفى وابن عمه وإنا نعادي مبغيك ونترك. You are the wasi of Mustafa and his cousin, and we disassociate from those who are your enemies. Then we come to the time of, again, the 5th and 6th Imam, Kumaiti Asadi, again a very talented Shah. Actually, he was sitting with, I'm not sure whether it was 5th or 6th Imam, when Imam expressed his own feelings in 2 lines of poetry, where he says, ذَهَبَ الَّذِينَ يُعَاشُ فِي أَكْنَافِهِمْ. Those elders under whose wing I used to live, they have gone. لَمْ يَبْقَ إِلَّا شَاطِمٌ أَوْ حَاسِدٌ. The remaining people are either those who abuse me or they are jealous of me. Kumail was sitting there, and he immediately, in the same, tazmeen as we call it, he says, وَبَقِيَ عَلَى ظَهْرِ الْبَسِيطَةِ وَاحِدٌ. But there is still one person alive on this earth, فَهُوَ الْمُرَادُ وَأَنْتَ ذَلِكَ الْوَاحِدُ. You are the one. For us, you are the support for the community. And he actually was so talented that in one of the Hajj, he comes to the Imam, and he was known actually to be a very open supporter of the Ahlul Bayt. He was in the most listed list of the Banu Umayyah Khilafat at that time. During Hajj, he actually, this is the 5th Imam's time, he recited some poetry for the Imam, and Imam turned towards the Kaaba and he says, Allahumma arham al-Kuwait. And not only that, Imam was so pleased with his poetry that he asked all those Banu Hashim members who were there in a Hajj with him that gather some money we can give him as a reward. And they were able to gather 10,000 dirhams. And Imam then gave it to Kuwait, and Kuwait refused. He says, by Allah, I did not do this poetry for money. If you must reward me, give me your shirt, which I would like to keep with myself, part of my kafan. So that was, this is where we say Zakarullah, that they have Allah in their mind when they are using their talent of poetry. Coming to the Abbasid era, we come to the famous poet during the Imam. His very long qasida, which begins with kind of a sad element about the Ahlul Bayt, that their power has been taken, their legacy has been taken, and this became very, very famous. And he met the Imam, and Imam actually rewarded him at the time a very, important story of his life. I thought maybe I'll share it with you. Salawat on him. They was traveling in a caravan with some people. I'm not sure where they were going, but they were highway robbers, we call them, Daku. We surrounded them and started looting them. And the chief was sitting in a kind of a hilltop at that time, and he was reciting the qasida composed by the Abbas. So he called him. He said, do you know whose lines you are reciting? He says, yeah, he's from us. So these guys were Shia. Probably they were Robin Hood type, but they were looting the caravan at the time. So he says, oh, he's from us. He's a Shia poet. And then Debel says, do you know him? He said, no, but I know his name. He's Debel. He says, I'm Debel. And as soon as he heard this, he called his fellows and he says, give their things back. And he says, we will escort this caravan to its destination to protect them. And so someone whose poetry became very, famous among the Shias at the time. Then we come to the days of Mutawakkil, where Ibn Sakit, a very talented poet, and because of his expertise, Mutawakkil appointed him as the teacher of Arabic language to his sons. But Mutawakkil was Yaseer of Banu Abbas, had this total bughz and hatred towards Ali and Ali. One day he came to the room, knowing that Ibn Sakit is from the followers of Ali. He says, do you think that my two sons are better or the sons of Ali? Ibn Sakit at that time, sometimes you're put in a situation of imtihan and ibtila. Ibn Sakit couldn't take that insult. The slave of Ali, Qambar, is better than your two sons. Don't compare them to Hassan and Hussein. And he actually paid for that. Mutawakkil ordered his people to tie him in a pole. And because he was a poet, he ordered that his tongue be cut. And this is how this poet became Shaheed. Just because defending the honor of Hassan and Hussein alayhi salatu wasalam. Salawat. And just as inspiration for the young people, this is where we have to realize that yes, poetry is a talent. You should be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if you have been blessed with that. But the main thing is always remember what is the purpose. And if the purpose is that, inshallah, salvation is there. Just few Hadees, when we look at this issue, especially when it comes to the poetry for Karbala, Marsiyah. This eulogy that you recite for the tragic event of Karbala, this is a very important part of our poetry. In Kamil al-Ziyarat, there is a narration where Abu Harun al-Makfuf comes to meet Imam Jafri al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam. He just came for ziyarat of the Imam, and the Imam said that I heard you compose Marsiyah on my grandfather Hussein. He says, yes. He said, you recite it for me. And he started reciting, but he says, no, not this way. I've been told you actually recite in a way which evokes emotions. And Imam had asked that a curtain be erected so that the women of the family also could come and sit on the other side. And so Abu Harun started reciting until Imam was crying. وَسُمِعَتِ الْبُكَاء مِنْ خَلْفِ السِّتْرِ. Even you could hear the women crying from the other side of the curtain. When he finished, Imam started saying, Ya Abu Harun, من أنشد في الحسين شعرا فبكى وأبكى 10 كتبت له الجنة. Anyone who recites a poem and for Hussein and cries and makes 10 individuals cry, Jannat is guaranteed for him. Then he brings the number down and says, anyone who recites a poetry and he cries and makes 5 individuals cry, Jannat is for him. And then he brings it even down and he said, anyone who composes a poetry for Hussein, he himself cries and makes one person's cry, Kutibat lahumul Jannah. Both of them will get Jannah. You know, when we talk about the importance of Marasi, this is a very important part of our legacy. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase the tawfiqat. Ashura in Karbala, as I said, you know, the Rajaz poetry by itself is a very rich poetry that we have. But we remember Hazrat Abbas alayhi salatu wassalam. Janab Abbas ke baare mein مسائل کے عنوان سے بہت کچھ ہے، لیکن صرف ہم ایک عنوان کو لے کے چلنا چاہیں گے، اور وہ یہ کہ جناب عباس پر جو بھروسہ تھا، کربلا کے جتنے شہداء تھے، جو بھی گیا تھا انہیں معلوم تھا کہ ہمارا کام صرف ایک ہے، ہمیں لڑنا ہے اور شہید ہونا ہے. لیکن عباس کی ذات وہ ذات ہے کہ جنہیں کہا گیا تھا کہ بچوں کے پانی کا انتظام، اور وہ پانی بہہ گیا. جناب عباس کی مصیبت اس عنوان سے بہت ہی منفرد ہے عاشور کے لیے. جناب عباس کے جہاں تک بھروسے کی بات ہے، امام حسین علیہ السلام نے عاشور کے دن جب اپنے لشکر کی کو مرتب کیا ہے، چھوٹی سی جماعت تھی، لیکن جس طرح سے تربیت حسین کو جناب امیر المومنین سے ملی تھی، امام نے اپنے بھی چھوٹی جماعت کو جو ہے 3 حصوں میں تقسیم کیا. میمنہ کی سرداری زہیر قین کو دی، میسرہ کی سرداری جناب حبیب ابن مظاہر کو دی، لیکن قلب لشکر کی علمداری اور سرداری جو ہے عباس کے ساتھ. یہ جنگ جو ہے آپ نمبرز کے لحاظ سے دیکھ لیں کچھ نہیں ہے، یہاں ہزاروں کی تعداد ہے اور یہاں تقریباً آپ 120 سے زیادہ نہیں تھے، اور پھر بھی یہ جنگ جو ہے صبح سے شروع ہوئی ہے، عصر تک چلی ہے. یہ جناب حسین کی سرداری اور عباس کی علمداری کا اثر ہے. عاشور کے دن جب بنو ہاشم کی شہادت کی منزل آتی ہے، اکثر شہید ہو چکے تھے، اس وقت جناب عباس آتے ہیں حسین ابن علی کے سامنے اور ایک جملہ کہتے ہیں مولا میرا نفس جو ہے اب تنگ ہو چکا، مجھے آپ اجازت دیں کہ ان قوم کفار سے جا کے ہم لڑیں. یہ تعبیر جناب عباس کی ہے، قوم کفار. حسین ابن علی نے عباس کے سراپا کو دیکھا ہے اور ایک جملہ کہا ہے کہ عباس اذا مضیت تفرق عسکری، عباس اگر تم چلے جاؤ گے تو میرا لشکر ختم ہو جائے گا. عجب نہیں کہ عباس پہ پلٹ کے کہا وہ مولا آپ وہ لشکر کہاں، لیکن حسین یہ کہنا چاہتے تھے کہ عباس جب تک تم زندہ ہو میری نظروں کے سامنے میرا لشکر زندہ. اتنا بھروسہ تھا عباس پر. لیکن اتفاق سے اسی وقت بچوں کی العطش کی آواز جو ہے اس کی فریکوینسی بڑھ چکی تھی. اسی وقت بچوں کی العطش کی آواز دوبارہ بلند ہوئی اور حسین نے کہا کہ عباس کچھ کرنا ہے تو ان بچوں کے لیے پانی لے کے آ. عباس کو بہانہ مل گیا، جاتے ہیں سکینہ کے پاس اور سکینہ سے کہتے ہیں مجھے مشکیزہ دو. وہ بچی جو ہے اس مشکیزہ لے کے آئی ہے، لیکن جب وہ چچا کو دے رہی تھی کتنے بھروسے کے ساتھ دے رہی کہ اگر چچا عباس جائیں گے تو یقیناً پانی لے کے آئیں گے. اور یہ جو ملاپ ہے اس علم کا جو عباس کا ہے اور سکینہ کے مشکیزہ،
جو اکثر آپ ساتھ دیکھتے ہیں، یہ بہت ہی پاورفل سمبل ہے. وہ علم جو ہے شہادت کی علامت ہے، اور وہ مشکیزہ سکینہ کی جو ہے بچوں کی مظلومیت کی علامت ہے. عباس روانہ ہونا چاہ رہے تھے کہ ایک کنیز نے آ کے آواز دی کہ عباس، زینب نے آپ کو یاد کیا ہے. عباس آتے ہیں خیمے میں، زینب کہتی ہیں اے عباس، ہم تمہیں روکیں گے نہیں، لیکن بیٹھو کچھ بات کرنی ہے. اس وقت کہتی ہیں، وہ بھروسے کی جو بات ہے، کہتے ہیں عباس، بچپنے سے بابا کہتے تھے بیٹی ایک وقت آئے گا تیری چادر کو لوٹا جائے گا، تجھے اسیر اور قیدی بنایا جائے گا، تیرے بازو میں رسن باندھی جائے گی. لیکن پھر ایک وقت آیا کہ تم پیدا ہوئے، تم جوان ہوئے، تمہاری بہادری اور شجاعت کا شہرہ عالم عرب میں پھیل گیا. اس وقت میں اکثر سوچا کرتی تھی یہ کس طرح سے ممکن ہے کہ وہ بہن جس کا عباس جیسا بھائی ہو، اس کی چادر کو کوئی ہاتھ لگائے یا اس کو قیدی اور اسیر بنائے. لیکن آج جو بھی جا رہا ہے عباس زندہ لوٹ کے نہیں آ رہا ہے. آج مجھے یقین ہے مجھے اسیر اور قیدی بنایا جائے گا، میری چادر کو لوٹا جائے گا، میرے بازوں پر رسن باندھی جائے گی. جناب عباس روائے بس ایک مرحلے پر ہم لے جانا چاہتے ہیں. عاشق کی قبر کے بیٹھ کر ایک مرثیہ پڑھتی تھی. بس اس پر ہم مجلس کو ختم کرنا چاہیں گے. فرماتی ہے یا من رأى العباس کر على جماہیر النقد ووراءه من ابناء حیدر کل لیس ذی لبد. اے جس نے آ کے خبر دی ہے مجھے، جس نے عباس کو یزیدی لشکر پر حملہ کرتے ہوئے دیکھا تھا، انبیت ان ابنی اصیب برأسہ مقطوع یدین، مجھے خبر دی گئی ہے کہ میرے بیٹے کے سر پر ضرب اس وقت لگی ہے جب اس کے ہاتھ کٹے ہوئے تھے. پھر عباس کو پکار کے کہتی ہے ویلی علی شبلی، اے میرا شیر، امال برأسہ ضرب العمل، جس کے سر پر گرز لگا ہے. کہتی ہے عباس مجھے یقین ہے اگر تیرے ہاتھ ہوتے، ہاتھ پہ تلوار ہوتی تو کوئی بھی تیرے قریب نہ آتا. اور آخر میں کہتی ہے لا تدعونی ویلک ام البنین، اے بنو ہاشم کی عورتیں مجھے اب ام البنین مت پکارنا، اس لیے کہ یہ ماں زندہ ہے لیکن میرے بیٹے سب شہید ہوتے. الا لعنۃ اللہ علی القوم الظالمین سیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون. خداوند اس طرح بات قبول فرما، ہمارے گناہوں کی بخش دے، ہماری توفیقات میں اضافہ فرما. خداوند عالم اسلام میں صلاح اور امن کی فضا پیدا کر، شیعان علی کو اپنے حفظ و امان میں رکھ، تکفیری افواج کی تمام صلاحیتوں کو نیست و نابود فرما، امام کے ظہور میں تعجیل فرما. ربنا تقبل منا انت السمیع العلیم. ماتم حسین. Sayyid.
ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا، ماتم ہے عباس کا، ہو گیا مرنا ستم عباس کا، ہو گیا